The accusation landed like a gunshot in the hushed dining room, shattering the fragile veneer of a perfect family gathering. "You stole my purse, Maria. I found it in your bag." My heart, moments before swelling with the warmth of a shared meal and the promise of a future with Asher, plummeted into a void of cold dread. All eyes were on me, my mother's pale, Asher's father's wide with shock, even the curious gazes of cousins I'd just met. My soon-to-be sister-in-law, Leona, stood in the center of the room, her voice a sharp, cutting blade, holding up a sleek leather purse like it was the very proof of my guilt. My hands, which had been resting in Asher's under the table just moments ago, felt suddenly empty and defenseless. The scent of roasted chicken and freshly baked bread, a smell that had symbolized belonging only a minute earlier, now felt like a cruel joke. The celebratory clinking of glasses had faded into an oppressive silence, broken only by the faint, mechanical hum of the air conditioning. I opened my mouth to protest, to form the words "I didn't," but they died on my lips. Leona, her manicured nails pointing at me like daggers, cut me off before I could even begin. "Don't lie. I saw it in your bag, you thief. You think you can just waltz into this family and take what's mine?" Her words were a physical blow. I knew the purse she was waving, a designer piece she'd flaunted at the few lunches we'd shared, lunches I had always, without fail, paid for. The bills had added up, a quiet tally of her casual forgetfulness and my desperate desire to be a part of Asher's world. But to accuse me of theft? It was a nightmare. I felt the weight of their judgment. And then, as my sister, Jane, who sat quietly in her wheelchair, met my gaze, a thought flashed through my mind, so clear and stark, it was like a sudden burst of light in the darkness. My own purse, the one I hadn't brought, wasn't the only one in the house. It wasn't my bag she had pulled the purse from. It was Jane's. And Jane, who hadn't moved from her seat all evening, could not have been the thief. It wasn't a laugh of joy or humor, but a raw, sharp sound of shock and comprehension. The carefully constructed life I had built with Asher was on the precipice, and Leona had just pushed it. The quiet battle was no longer quiet. It had just exploded, and this was only the beginning. My sharp, bitter laugh shattered the fragile quiet, a final, defiant note in the symphony of chaos. It was the sound of a woman realizing a truth that had been hiding in plain sight. It wasn't my purse in my sister's bag, and it hadn't been put there by some random act. Leona? I had always been the kind of person who kept her head down, who worked hard and stayed out of trouble. Growing up, it was just me, my mom, and my older sister Jane, in a small apartment. We were poor, but we were a unit, and I learned early that the only way to get ahead was to earn it. That's how I landed my data analyst job at insurance. And it's also where I met Asher, my supervisor. He was my opposite, a man with a quiet strength that made me feel safe. He was grounded, unlike his sister Leona, who seemed to crave the spotlight and attention. When he proposed, I felt like I had finally found a place to call home, a life I could be proud of. But Leona was different. Asher had warned me she was a lot, but I didn't grasp the extent of it until she started inviting me to lunches after our engagement. Each time she would conveniently forget her wallet or claim to be short on cash. The unpaid tabs piled up, a silent monument to her casual forgetfulness and my desperate desire to belong. I was so caught up in the glow of our engagement that I didn't see the truth. She wasn't forgetful, she was using me. The last time I saw her before this dinner, I had finally found the courage to stand up to her. After she brazenly asked for money outside our office, I finally said no. "You haven't paid me back for any of the lunches, Leona." Her face twisted with anger, but Asher stepped in, his voice low and furious. "Enough, Leona. You don't get to talk to her like that. Pay her back what you owe her, or don't ask for anything else." Her shouts followed us down the street as we walked away. I didn't know then that her resentment was deeper than I could have ever imagined. I didn't know she was already talking to Asher behind my back, trying to convince him I was a fraud. But as I stood there in the silent dining room, my sister's voice, calm and steady, cut through the tension and exposed everything. "That's not Maria's bag, Leona. It's mine." The room went completely still. Leona, who had been on a furious tear, froze, her face turning pale. Jane, in her wheelchair, hadn't moved an inch all night. She looked at Leona with a quiet intensity, her voice low. "You think my sister stole your purse, or that I did? I've been in this chair all night, so tell me, how did your purse get in my bag?" The question hung in the air, a damning accusation. Jane's words had landed with the force of an unanswerable truth, and the silence in the dining room was now thick with an unbearable tension. Leona didn't know what to do. Her eyes darted around the room, from Jane to Asher's parents, and then finally to me. The shame of being caught was so profound, it was almost a physical presence in the room. Asher, my steady, unwavering Asher, stood up. His voice, usually so calm, was now a low, furious rumble. "You tried to set her up," he said. He turned to me, his eyes softening just for a moment, an apology in their depths. "Maria, I'm so sorry. I should have warned you she would go this far. She's been talking trash about you for months, telling me you're not good enough, that you're just using me." I was stunned, but Asher's voice, now a voice of steel, continued. "You've been using her, making her pay for your lunches, begging for loans you never repaid." He took a deep breath, and then the final, damning truth spilled out. "You even got fired from your last job for stealing from the register. Did you think we wouldn't find out?" The gasp from the table was audible. His parents, who had looked so proud just moments ago, were now shattered. Leona's face went completely pale, her bravado finally crumbling to dust. Her carefully constructed life of borrowed glamour and deceit was collapsing around her. "That's not... You don't understand," she stammered, but her words were weak, a final, pathetic attempt to cling to a lie. I looked at her, at the raw, ugly truth of her actions, and a strange sense of clarity settled over me. I wasn't a thief. I was a survivor. My mom and Jane had taught me that. I had spent my entire life building my own worth brick by careful brick, and I wasn't going to let this woman tear it down. I walked over to Asher and took his hand, my grip firm. My sister, my rock, had my back, and my partner, my future, had never once doubted me. The love in that room, a love built on trust and truth, was a shield that Leona could not penetrate. "Leona," I said, my voice steady, no longer shaking, "I wanted us to be family, but you can't keep hurting people and expect them to stick around. I'm choosing Asher, and I'm choosing myself." She opened her mouth, her face a mask of shame and fury, then closed it. Without another word, she grabbed her purse, the very object of her crime, and stormed out, the front door slamming behind her. In the weeks that followed, the final pieces of Leona's story came to light. Her divorce, her debts, the reasons for her recklessness. She called me one last time, her voice small and desperate, begging for money, promising to change. But I had learned my lesson. I told her I couldn't be part of it anymore, and then, for the first time, I hung up on her. On our wedding day, she was gone, and her absence was a gift. It was just us, Asher and me, my mom, my sister Jane, and Asher's parents who danced with joy and relief. Our wedding wasn't just a celebration of our love, but a triumph of truth over deception. Now, as I sit here a month later, feeling the first flutters of the baby we're expecting, I think about how far we've come. The scars of that night remain, the sting of the accusation still a dull ache, but they are also a testament to our strength, to the love that didn't waver, and to the family we built on the foundation of honesty. We were pushed to the brink, but we didn't break. We stood together, and in doing so, we found our forever.